So good afternoon, everybody. It's so nice to be here with you. Has been a great pleasure to hear those wonderful Dharma talks every day. It's amazing how far we have come. Yeah, since we started, I mean, so many faces are. We have been together doing this for so long, and suddenly it's like the Dharma weaving tapestry is getting so rich. It's a joy for me and Roshi to witness that. We feel very supported in the Dharma and in sound. Every day I think, oh, I have to give a Dharma talk. Oh well, tomorrow. I'll think about it. Tomorrow, then comes tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow. I've been working really hard because I'm not a writer. That's not my profession. I never written anything, but you just got the time in my life that I had told you. I don't know how many retreats ago. We count time in retreats. I don't know how many moons. I don't know how many retreats ago. That suddenly I have seen my face in the mirror and I have realized that I was old. And that was a great happiness. No, and I remember telling you guys that I was singing, I'm old, finally, I'm old. I've been waiting to be old all my life, and now I am. So a lot of things have been stuck inside me for many years, so I had that little prophecy since I was little that I was gonna understand these things, pretty supernatural, some, when I was old. So all my spiritual practice, all my dedication to the Dharma is because these things happened to me when I was 5 years old and beyond that. And finally, because I'm old, things suddenly start flowing and I can express these things. And I had Tanya and Sean here, and they were so generous to read my draft, my rough manuscript, rough draft, and give me a lot of direction. Also a lot of good feedback. And one of the things that Tanya said is that many people are not going to believe this. Yeah, and I know that. And I carry so much shame. So much shame. It's not personal. It's because the experience I had were not personal. I'm gonna read, because the Dharma talk, I just took some things from the book, and then other things appear miraculously, put it all together, and it's like a tale, like a story tale. It's my story tale. It's a part of my story. Because Sean and Tanya want me to fatten it up a lot more. So I'm gonna be fattening it up a lot more and getting a lot more concentrated in the details of everything. I'm gonna say it all. It doesn't matter how much shame I feel, really. I'm used to, so it doesn't matter. Well, as an introduction, I have to tell you, you know, when we do koans, and koans help us to forget the self, when you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun that in a tradition that seems so serious, we can have all this fun. Being a tree, or being a mountain, or being a flower, or being a spider, or whatever. We get great joy in forgetting the self and jump and be a sofa or whatever, a dog. So today, remember another time where we had a lot of fun when I asked you, let's be all women today. That was a lot of fun. That's part of the practice. Forgetting the self, and let's all be women today. Right? But if you don't want to, you don't have to, but you miss something. Roshi, would you like to?
Yeah, I want to be a woman.
Anyway, I do start very seriously with part of the Platform Sutra from the Sixth Patriarch. But I found it to be very interesting to what I'm going to say after. And what he says here is very easy to understand, but I will explain it some more. He talks about that in our system of meditation, we neither dwell upon the mind nor upon purity. And that's very interesting, because we might think that we need to be pure, but he's saying, no, we don't have to be pure. And we don't have to dwell upon the mind. Or we do not approve of non-activity. That's why in Zen, it's not a passive practice, it's an active practice. In Zamu or in the cushion, we are doing something. We are nailing our attention into our practice. That is something and requires a lot of energy. He says that to dwelling upon the mind is primarily delusive. And when we realize that it's only a ghost, this delusive mind is only a ghost, there is no need to dwell on it. As to dwelling upon purity, our nature is intrinsically pure, and so far as we get rid of all delusive idea, there will be nothing but purity in our nature, for it is the delusive idea that obscures Tathagata. That's understandable. So our nature is pure. So we don't need to attach another purity upon our natural purity. We just have to let go of that obscures that purity. And that's what we do here. I don't know how you call it yesterday, Crystal, a concoction of stuff. Behind the concoction of stuff is just all purity. If we direct our mind to dwell upon purity, we are only creating another delusion, the delusion of purity. Since delusion has no abiding place, it is delusive to dwell upon it. Purity has neither shape nor form, but some people go so far as to invent the form of purity and treat it as a problem for solution. Holding such an opinion, these people are purity-ridden, and their true essence is thereby obscured. So, we know what we have to do, just be in alignment with our true self, and our true self feels true to us, connecting with our heart. We know what sounds true to us. That's our true self. What feels right to us, deep down, not in the head, just deep down in the heart, we know when we break from that alignment from our true self. But if we are in alignment, that is purity. Okay, now, when I was 7 years old, I was forced to take the first communion and go to confession. I was taught that if I didn't confess all of my sins, I would commit a venial or mortal sin, depending on the degree of the unconfessed sin. I did not want to confess to the priest how much I like to have my body pressed against a boy I like. Ever since the episode with my aunt happened, I thought that for sure pressing my boy against a boy must be considered a mortal sin, and undoubtedly the punishment must be hell. I remember standing in front of the confessionary, waiting in line for my turn. The heat of the tropics, the fan turning above my head making a squeaking sound, the cookies singing outside, and me sweating the sweats of hell inside the church. Those were hours of tremendous suffering for me. And then, when it finally was my turn to enter the confessionary, I would not tell the priest what I have done, therefore committing another mortal sin. If that were not enough, then I would go to receive the communion so that my aunt would think that I had confessed all of my sins. In my mind, that implied another mortal sin. Oh my, I always felt I was in such trouble. One day, however, I did tell the priest that I had been fresh with a boy. En español se dice, yo hice fresquerías con un niño. For me, it was like so hard to say those things. I felt so scared when the priest seemed to have a lot of interest about it and he started to ask me all kinds of questions like, what exactly did you do? Where did you do it? How old was the boy? After that day, I thought that I'd rather die in mortal sin and go to hell than having another conversation like that. With a man behind a veil whose face I couldn't see. Of course, it would have not been any better to see his face. The intense fear I felt did not stop me from continuing to do fresquerías. That was heaven to me. It reminded me of the famous verse of Zen Master EQ. With a young beauty I am engrossed in fervent love play. We sit in a pavilion, a pleasure girl and this Zen monk. I am enraptured by hugs and kisses, and certainly do not feel as I am burning in hell. In the great hard way, I was not able to explain my real reasons for writing the book. I was not able to say that staying with my feelings of fear and terror had taken me to the experience of a heavenly realm, in particularly to the Sambhogakaya realm, the realm of the light. I had entered there. But I couldn't say that in that book because I was still locked in silence. When I was little, I heard a voice inside myself saying that I was going to understand when I was old. It was a bit like a prophecy. It was not time yet for me to speak up completely. I had to become old first. The first time I saw my old face, it was less than a year ago. When I saw my face in the mirror, I suddenly recognized that I was old. I was so happy singing to myself, I'm old. My whole life I've been waiting for this moment of being old to understand my prophecy. This reminded me of the poem from the 5 ranks of Tosan. An old crone, having just awakened, comes upon an ancient mirror. That which is clearly reflected in front of her face is none other than her own likeness. Don't lose sight of your face again. and go chasing your shadows. On the sixth night of a 7-day retreat, I felt the presence of a spirit of light. I didn't see it. I only felt its presence. And this spirit presented me with two paths. One was the path of the heart and the other was the path of the samurai. I chose the path of the heart, and the very moment I made my selection, it was as if an ancient and vast dam had opened. It was not personal pain that I felt. It was the collective pain of the whole world. That night I cried what I call rivers and lakes. I wasn't crying for any particular reason. It was just like a torrential rain in the rainforest. It was as if the earth was releasing some of her suffering through me. It was interesting that Tanya asked me, what are the effects of patriarchy that affect me personally? And the pain of the earth, feeling the suffering of the earth, breaks my heart. I cannot live in peace unless I do everything I can to help out the situation. And writing these things is my way. Presenting the practices that I present later on the book is my way. Talking about all these taboos is my way. Before I went to bed, I looked out of the window and I saw that my eyes were the shining stars, and there were lots of them. I went to sleep with a very tender and soothing feeling in my heart. As I lay down, I entered into a different dimension. And in that dimension, I manifested as a woman of light, and every form of life came out of my womb, even the small insects. Standing behind me, there was a man of light. I later recognized this man as the essence of Shishin Roshi. In the morning, I happily went to tell my experience to my Zen teacher. He was also a Jesuit priest. He had always been so kind to me, but this time he wasn't. My Kon studies with him were almost completed, and I had a promising future as his successor. He wasn't in the least bit happy when I told him that I had become a woman of light and that everything had come from my womb. He looked serious and kind of upset. Then he told me that if I wanted to continue with my Zen career, I had to forget about that experience. I was shocked to hear this. Forget about that experience? How could I forget about that experience? How could I betray my own heart? That is impossible. I went to my room, packed up all my things, threw them in the back of my Pathfinder, and left the retreat. I had so many tears I could hardly see the road, and I had to drive 9 hours to get back home. I stopped in the first post office I found. I wrote the following poem and sent it to him in an express envelope. From the dimension of blue light, everything was blue, so I call it the dimension of blue light. It was soft, pastel, blue light. Not even 1,000 steel swords can kill me. Free from life and death, my tears make the shining stars, and my laughter the ocean dance. I'm not a Buddha though, but the mother of all things. Once again, I had entered the Sambhogakaya realm, but this time I myself had become a woman of light, the sacred feminine, the great mother, and from her, from my womb, every creature emanated. I also realized that all women are endowed with this potential to experience this. Once I had this experience, it was impossible to forget about it. I had so many questions. Why was my teacher so upset because I had an experience of the sacred feminine? Shouldn't he be happy for me? A few years ago, I found the following description of the sacred feminine. Trinli Norbu Rinpoche said, in the profound Tibetan Buddhist Sutra system, the Dakini is called the Great Mother. Indescribable, unimaginable perfection of wisdom, unborn, unobstructed essence of the sky. She is sustained by self-awareness alone. I bow down before the Great Mother of the victorious ones, past, present, and future. Thus, it is written in the Great Paramita Sutra, in the precious tantric tradition, desireless, blissful wisdom is the essence of all desirable qualities, unobstructed going and coming in endless space. I just love this. Unobstructed coming and going in endless space. This wisdom is called the sky dancer, feminine wisdom, the Dakini. Yesterday or days before or now, we are seeing how with this very, very concentrated practice, with just one pointed concentration practice, thought can come and go, but who cares? Just being here, in the space, in this spacious mind. In this spacious mind is so liberating. Who cares about grabbing a thought? It feels so tiresome even to try to grab a thought. Just remaining here in this open space that cannot be called now or reality. It's just consciousness. And that we experience that is not connected with anything else, nothing from the past, nothing from the future, is a very deep space. It's actually infinite time. It's actually infinite time. So we tap into infinite time. Infinite time is no time. So we tap into no time. And because we are not holding on to anything, this is a very spatial. You tell me how it says, Roshi.
Spatial.
Tell them.
Spatial.
You guys understood that? It's not a special, right?
Spatial.
Yeah, I cannot. That's what I meant. It's very. I'm gonna say special. That I understand that. It's very special. It's a very special. And we become very luminous. Just staying there in that one pointed concentration, maintaining that effort, we become in alignment with our true self, and we become very luminous ourselves. Like heavenly bodies. Like heavenly bodies are luminous. How luminous do you want to get? Then that's how deep you have to go. I had never practiced anything else besides Zen, but I was having experiences that were not common in the Zen traditions. I knew without a bit of doubt that the experiences I was having were real. However, inside me, I needed to find someone who would understand what was happening to me. I needed to be confirmed. I went around visiting a couple of Zen teachers in other lineages, but they didn't know, they couldn't help me. About 6 months after I had left my teacher, I received a letter from a Zen group in Boulder announcing that a Zen master had moved to Boulder and that he was teaching at Naropa Buddhist University. One day I went to meet this new Zen teacher, Jerry Shishin Wick Sensei. He was sensei then. I told him about my experience. He said, I don't know what had happened to you, but I do support you in your search of finding out what it is. His words were soothing to me. I had found someone who would support me in my search. Not only that, I found someone who was honest enough to say that he didn't understand, instead of rejecting me or making up stories about it. It was around that time that the book of Lama Soltrim Alione, Women of Wisdom, fortuitously fell into my hands. In the introduction to this book, she talked about the enlightenment experience of some women. I recognized my experiences there. In the book, I found some contact information for Lama Soltrim at Tara Mandala. I called and she answered. I told her about my predicament and she agreed to have an interview with me. I traveled to Pagosa Springs with my 6-year-old son, Roldan. When I arrived at the retreat center, a few people guided me to the interview place that was going to be outdoors under a canopy. When I saw Lama Soltrim coming and I saw her light, I immediately felt at home. While we talked, my son Roldan circumambulated both of us non-stop. Lama Soltrim admired him and frequently glanced at him with a broad smile. When I was done telling her about my experiences, she said, "You're having Dakini experiences." Dakini? I said. I had never heard this word before. I felt so happy that she knew the word for it. I felt so relieved that what had happened to me even had a name, Dakini. This word was like music to my ears. When I came back to Boulder, I told Shishin Sensei, I found out what had happened to me. It's called Dakini experiences. Entering into emptiness became the door to other realities. Emptiness is the vast inner space that exists before creation. It is very luminous. It is a spacious luminosity. Through this inner space, clear memories of a past different from the past that we have been told started to emanate. These memories were of a benign, sacred feminine that emanated unconditional love, clear and pure. She didn't instill fear or anger. Practicing Zazen meditation, we can enter through the many gates of emptiness, sometimes accessing the past and the future. Time always stands still, but we think that time passes, but actually we are the one that pass. We also think of the past as a distant, but actually it is and it is not. Most people have a hard time understanding that time is linear in the relative world, but in the absolute reality, time doesn't exist. All of our previous experiences in this life can be accessed through the gate of emptiness, as easy as dipping a hand into a shallow pool of water. I didn't mean all of our previous experiences, previous life. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, all of our experiences of previous lives can be accessed through the gate of emptiness as easy as dipping a hand into a shallow pool of water. Like, how far can you go? How far do you want to go? There is a lot more to us than what we see. We usually identify ourselves with the part of us that is visible. We are like trees. So much of the tree grows below the surface of the earth. There is so much to us that exists underneath the ground, our collective history. The earth keeps the memory of everything. One night I dreamt of an ancient lady. She was naked. She was carrying ornaments made of shells. She had several hands that carry bones and conches. Beside her there was a stream. Above the stream there was a dharma wheel. Above all of these there were large roots, then dirt, and then a large and vast tree. It was clear that she was back and she was going to stay. She is the fierce goddess of compassion. The earth had kept her safe in her belly all of these years. This realization came to me years ago when I was sitting in Zazen. I felt as if the ground had opened up and a spiral into the distant past had become accessible. A vortex of time lit, and the unbroken lineage of my ancestral line of spiritual women entered my body. The spirit of who we are at the personal and at the collective level is available to each one of us. I remember the day that Shishin Roshi ordained me as a Zen priestess. It was on a Friday the 13th. We didn't choose that number, only a coincidence. It was an ancient sacred number. During the ceremony, I saw many spirit women of red color coming to join the ceremony with me. I knew that the red color symbolized blood. I was very touched, moved, honored, and humble at the same time. It was a collective ceremony for all of us. In the Zen tradition, we have some koans related to old women who sell tea and cakes in huts near the monasteries. In contrast to the Zen masters, who are well known and live in the monasteries, these old ladies have no names. They are usually very enlightened ladies who listen to the Dharma when they are allowed to enter the monastery, but have solitary practice for the most part. My heart is always with these ladies. I do not want to make fake names to put on them. They are my heart, and they have my name. I just have one koan of a woman from Hakuin, so I can make a pause and that I have no idea, why those things happened to me when I was 5 years old, the first time it happened. But once you see a body of light, and once you enter into a heavenly realm, the world doesn't mean very much anymore to you. I just wanna go back there. I just wanna be a body of light. I just wanna enter the Sambhogakaya realm. And I will happily die to do it. So I have entered Zen because I had to understand. In Zen, I did understand, especially when some patriarchs had some visions also of spirits of light. And I thought it was the sixth patriarch, but it wasn't. It was Bodhidharma's first successor, Eka. Mm-hmm. He was the one that was visited by a spirit of light and directed him to Bodhidharma. Mm-hmm. And he gave him a great map, because these things are like that, so specific. The next day he had these tumors on his head that represented the mountains where Bodhidharma lived. Could you imagine? That anybody can be crazy. I mean, it was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die of all these tumors. But I guess doctors didn't know that much then, so I think he got somebody that, like a healer, told him, oh, these are not regular bumps. These represent the mountains where Bodhidharma lives. You should go there. And he went. So I felt happy, that there were these things in Zen tradition. I felt like I was at home, that it was not so weird that this happened. this actually happens. The first time that happened when I was 5 years old, the biggest problem was that my family shut me up. It's like I lost my voice. They told me I could not speak about that. And maybe, it was because at that time women were afraid to be taken crazy. If they have experience like that, they would be told that they were crazy. So maybe that's why, but I didn't even know the name of what I have seen. So in the morning I was just singing, I have seen Santa Claus, I have seen Santa Claus. And when I described my experience of Santa Claus, that was not Santa Claus, what I see. That was something else. And I felt shame. I felt shame. And then I felt more shame years after that, when we were already in Spain. And the same two women that told me to shut up, I never talk about that, take me to see the grotto of the Virgin of Lourdes. And there they are, admiring the grotto of the Virgin of Lourdes that appeared to this shepherd's girl. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. They told me to shut up, and then they are all going for this other girl. And it's that happened to me in your own house. But I couldn't say anything. I was totally locked in silence. But I felt very shamed. I think that's when I got really shamed that they would do that, and they had done that to me, and continue to lock me more in silence. But having to see an enlightened being like that, a being of light like that, I mean, there is nothing else in the world that I want to be, It's like somebody would have asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a body of light, definitely. Much better than a fireman or although firemen are amazing. I didn't, so from that, I mean, it's like that. You enter into another reality where everything is complete and there is no lack. It's nirvana. I had entered nirvana. No suffering, only peace, love, great amount of love, all love. Then you live in the world, but you just want to go back there. It's like I could never forget that. So at school, I didn't behave very well. I really drove the nuns crazy. I just didn't care. Behaving improperly was the best thing I could do to remain alive. From being in the tropical forest in Puerto Rico, then I was transplanted to fascist Spain in time of the dictator. It was a life like black and white. In Puerto Rico, I was happy. This was a time where Puerto Rico was a prosperous island. It was the most beautiful island I could ever imagine. And I had a horse, and I rode that horse, and I was so free, galloping with the horse, swimming with the horse, and suddenly I am in fascist Spain, in the school of nuns, mean nuns. Nuns at that time were mean nuns. And I kept my sanity being mischievous. I didn't study. All the studies, there was nothing that was nourishing for a kid. All the studies, you have to memorize everything, even the story, the history, all the battles, all the years, Spanish history. What do I care? What do I care? I'm not gonna study that. Making me. So it's amazing how that kept me safe, misbehaving, and knowing that misbehaving was not a sin, that the Lady of Light liked it. She liked the fresquerias. I felt in contact with her, during the school. It was with the nuns that I got another kind of revelation, kind of a voice that opens in your body, but it's not one of your head bodies talk. No, it was like, it's almost like the earth had opened inside you and the sky is talking to you, and you pay attention to that. And that's the voice that told me I would understand later when I was old. Of course, and for me, old was 40, 50, 60. I'm almost 65. I'm not 65 yet. But soon. And then there is no fear. There is no fear. There is fear if I don't do what I have to do. I need to obviously present what had happened to me, and it had been a lot, and I have not talked about it to the world. Because the world is in so much suffering. And the creatures are in so much suffering. So I have to put my bit of sand there, and I knew that this is the way I have to do it. Because of all these things that happen, I know that this is what I have to do, and there is no way of saying that I will not do it, because I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. But I'm not forced either to do it. I don't have a choice, but I'm not forced. It's very clearly that my life is not my life. That I'm here for a different purpose. And this whole abbey, we work here so much. For me, it really represents a mandala. It's a mandala. I don't know if you noticed it. It's a mandala. And the outside, all the animals that we care so much, is the outer rings of the mandala. And then the grounds and the buildings is the other ring of the mandala. And then the residence and the retreats and you guys are another ring. And in the center ring is me in my room writing this book. That I don't know where it's gonna go, or it's being written. And my husband. And my husband. Maybe I mentioned you in the center ring of the mandala with me. very encouraging always. My biggest support. Somebody asked me, why do you know that you were not crazy when you were seeing those things? Really? You think if I were crazy, I would have gone through all the Zen training? It requires a very healthy mind to go through all these retreats and to reach the depths that we reach, and not to be confused through the many labyrinths of the mind. I mean, it requires a very sane mind. But I am going to tell in my book that when I was in Rochester, New York, and there were 60 people per teacher, 60 people per teacher, and Doku-sans only lasted 3 seconds if you were lucky, because I've been run out of the room just opening the door. No, really. And I saw 2 women coming okay and leaving not okay. They had to go into psychiatric treatment. And I saw also, I didn't see it, but I heard that somebody committed suicide at the Zen Center. And people were not taken care, you know. These retreats are very strong, and people need to be checked constantly. How are you doing? Especially new people, that they need to have a strong mind to traverse these landscapes that could be very, very dark sometimes. So at that time we couldn't talk about anything personal. So I was shaking with terror, and all I had was my koan, who am I? And that's all I embraced. It was my only lifesaver while I was going through a lot of terror. It was who is feeling terror, who, you know, it's like a wounded animal, almost like who, and shaking, who. Nobody to ask anything. So I knew that there were people there, you know, been maybe 20 years in Mu, or 30 or 50. Nobody, you know, was able to break through the first koan very easily, because nothing was addressed. You have to feel all out on your own, and if you have emotions standing in the way of that, you didn't get any help. So, you know, witnessing this was certainly a great encouragement for the Great Heart Way, and for talking here with the whole person, not just with the you know the koan or you don't know the koan. So this is a lot more healthy than what I went through. And for last, I have a koan here, and this was the first koan that I ever presented. And it was the first time that Shishin was going on a trip or something, and asked me to give a Dharma talk. Oh my God, I was so scared. And this is the koan that I chose. And again, I bring it here. Elderly woman once attended a lecture by Hakuin, where Hakuin said, "The pure land of mind only, the Amida of one's own body. Once Amida appears, mountain, rivers and air, plants, trees and forests, all at once emanate a great light. If anyone wants to know this, you should look into your own heart." This is one of those women that I was telling you that are very enlightened, that live close to the monasteries. but are not allowed very often inside the monastery. So they have a lot of merit. And one particular thing they have is they have no names. And in this koan, Master Hakuin was against the Pure Land school of Buddhism, who believe in a paradise different from this world and a mythical intermediary called Amida Buddha, without whose help no salvation was possible. So he's saying there is no nirvana or pure land outside our own heart-mind. There is no Buddha outside our own body. If we want to realize nirvana and our true self, we need to look in our own heart. Once we realize our true self in our own body, we see everything emanating a great light. Hearing this, the elderly woman said to herself, "This is not such a hard thing." Returning to her home, she meditated day and night, bringing this to mind both in wakefulness and during the sleep. That's very important. I found that to be a very important part of practice, that we don't abandon practice. That it's very important that we sit in the zendo and then we stand up. We don't leave the practice. We continue practicing. We continue focusing, whether it is our breath or our root koan or whatever practice you might have. But the breath and the root koan really work well with our daily activities. So that's this woman do. So one day, as she was washing a pot, she suddenly broke through. Tossing the pot aside, she rushed to see Hakuin. She said, "I have run across Amida in my own body. Everything on earth is emanating a great light. How wonderful!" She danced with joy. Hakuin said, "So you say, but what about a cesspool? Does it emanate light?" I was laughing about this because the other day I was in the backyard and there was this very nice sound. It was like a waterfall, totally. It was a total waterfall. I could sit on the bench and, relax with the waterfall sound in the back of my head. It was the septic system that had been emptied. And then the water was flushing, and because it was empty, you could hear. You could have not know the difference between that and a pristine, waterfall someplace else. It was just exactly like that. It was like you told about the story with the skull and the water. It was like that. So if you wanna sit at a relaxing place in the yard, now that you have dropped all your conditionings, and your minds are completely empty of anything that was lingering there before. So the woman went up to Hakuin, gave him a slap and said, "This old guy still hasn't penetrated." Hakuin roared with laughter. And that's the end of the poem.